Hello, all. Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon. Now, this is something that we will be doing on a weekly basis. So, based on your feedback, your comments, we have moved the BCA Open Quiz to LinkedIn now, and every week, at the end of every week, we'll discuss about the responses that we received on those quizzes and what was the correct answer. If there are questions still, you can drop them into the comments. Okay, so let's get ahead with it. So first question, which we have already discussed, but let's quickly go through it. That what is the maximum size for a table in Business Central? The options were 4K, 8K. It's determined by the SQL server, and it's determined by the BC compiler. Now, surprisingly, the responses were as I was expecting. There are still some people who think that it is 4K. Now, just a reminder, the 4K limit was available in some versions of Dynamics Nav. Some people think that it is determined by BC compiler. Now, that statement, the last option, is not true because it's actually not based on what the BC rules are or NAV rules were. It was kind of removed that way. Now, interestingly, there were two other options, which is 8K and determined by SQL Server, and I was expecting a fight off between these two options. So 8K is the right option with 29% votes at this moment, but that is as of today. Because as per Microsoft documentation, the maximum size of a table with all its fields and keys and all will be determined by the SQL Server. So as of today, SQL Server limits a table size to 8K. So that's why it's 8K. Tomorrow, if SQL Server changes this to 16K or 10K, it'll get updated. So the right answer for this question is determined by SQL Server as per Microsoft documentation. Let's head up to next question, which is which of the following trigger is invalid for a table in Business Central? Now the options were on insert, on validate, on modify, and on delete. And to tell you the truth, I was a little bit surprised with the kind of responses that I got onto this. So let's look at the responses. There were 5% people who answered the question thought it is on insert. Just FYI, you're wrong, because on insert is a valid trigger for table. Some people thought on modify, only 1% people, so I'm still happy with it. But for those 1% people, again, on modify is also a valid table trigger. 5% people thought that it is on delete trigger. So for those 5%, it is a valid trigger on a table, which is on delete. On insert gets triggered when you insert a record. On modify gets triggered when you modify a value in a table. And on delete gets triggered when you delete a record from a table. The only option which is correct on this is on validate, because it is not a table trigger, it is a field trigger on the table. If you need more detail, let me know, but just FYI, the correct answer was on validate, which seems pretty obvious with the responses that we got here. Going forward to the next question is what is the maximum length of an object name in Business Central? Now on this, I got two follow-up questions which we'll be asking later in this quiz. So thank you for those questions. But what is the maximum length on an object in Business Central? Now this question is a little bit incorrect after I read those and learned about those new two questions. But we'll still go through with the basic NAV objects. The options were 10, 50, 80, and 30. The majority votes were given to 30 characters, and that is the correct answer. 10 was never a limit, ever. 50 was never a limit. 80 was, again, never a limit. So 30 is majorly when you create an object, the maximum length that you can go to is 30 characters. Now there are some, what do you call that, outliers into this question, and we'll surely cover it in the future questions as we go through it. So for now, the 30 is the maximum length of majority of object. Let me put it this way. Okay, coming down to the next question. In which range are system tables created in Business Central? Now the options were between 1 to 49,999 or 50,000 to 90,999, 2 million and higher, and 70 million to 74,999,999. I was a little bit surprised or stunned with the replies because 2% people thought that it is in the 7 million range, if I'm reading it right. 13% people thought it is 1 to 49,999. 15% people thought it is 50,000 to 90,999. And 69%, which is correct, thought it is more than 2 million. Now let's understand it and let's delve into it for a little more if I can. The system objects in a Business Central world are stored in this system app. Okay, this app. And all these objects are in the system app and they are tagged as the system tables, and there are now in Business Central 14 and higher, NAB 14 or BC 14 and higher, there are new system code units also added. Now if you look at from a NAV perspective, the system objects were tied to the platform. It kind of talks about the platform part of your product, whereas the rest of the objects are part of the application of the product. How they are different? Now there is no what do we call that, development environment in Business Central, but back in the days when there was a development environment, these objects were automatically created when you created a new database from the development environment. So they were dependent on the platform or on the executable of your system, and rest of the object that we see in Business Central are dependent on the application. So when you read about in Microsoft documentation, there are two different areas: do a platform update or do an application upgrade, and those are completely different things altogether. So let me give an example. If you're currently on let's say 24.1 and there is a platform hotfix which fixes the issue that you're facing, which is on BC24 CU4, let's say, without upgrading completely, which you should not be doing, just FYI, you can just update the platform to 24.4. At that point, your system application, which is this, objects will be different than your application object, which is the rest of the object. So your system application will point to 24.4, whereas your application will point to 24.0, which is your current application version. So that's how they are differed, and the system tables are created in this range. Okay, moving forward. Which property of an object is used to display a different name in the user interface? Now let me bring a very simple concept into it. When you create a new object in Business Central, either it's a table, page, report, code unit, or any of those, you should be, if you're not, should be adding a prefix or a suffix to the object name. But that name should not be displayed to the user, because let's say the prefix that I use for my internal dev and for demos is SDH. If a table is called, let's say, customer in my scenario, the user should not see SDH customer. They should only see it as a name as customer. And that you achieve with one of these properties, and the property options were caption ML, caption, external name, and caption class. 17% people thought it's caption ML, 1% people thought it's external name, and 6% people thought about caption class. Now there are certain uses of these other properties, but the right answer for this question was caption. So when I create a new table, I make sure that or not just table, on any other object in my extension, we make sure that we add a caption which does not include my prefix, so that it's just behind the scene and user only sees what matters. Same goes for the fields. When you're using table extension and adding fields into it, the field name should contain your prefix or suffix, whereas the caption of that field should be without the suffix or prefix. Hope that's clear. We'll come to that. Let's move to the next one. Which of the following parameter is incorrect for the caption property? Now, I think I did not get it wrong, but I guess it was a little bit confusing question. The options were locked, caption ML, comment, and max length. Now the responses were, let me click on it. 44% thought that locked is not a correct parameter for the caption property. 20% people thought caption ML. 9% people thought comment, and 28% people thought max length. And I'm a little bit surprised about it, because the right answer for this is caption ML. Caption ML is not a property for the caption. Caption ML is itself a separate property altogether. And let me open documentation to answer this question. Okay, here is the caption property. This applies to all these different kind of objects and areas into the system. The property has 3 optional parameters, and let me zoom this in. Logged, comment, and max length. If it is set to true, the caption is logged and should not be translated. You cannot use translation for that particular caption. Comment describes the text of the caption. For example, if you had %1 and other things, you can define the comment of explaining to the user or developer what that comment means or what that caption means. Next is max length. Sets the max length of the specific caption, how big the caption is, and this is how you define it. You define the caption with a comma. These are optional property, which is logged true. Then you add the comment, and then you can add the max length. A caption is a text used to show the identity of a control, for example, in the caption bar of a page or on a label on other control. So the correct answer for this is caption ML. That caption ML is the incorrect parameter for the caption property. Okay, so those were the questions that were asked this week. Let me know into the comments what you thought about the questions or about the answers. If I need to go a little bit deep into the answer, I would love to do that. Please add that into the comment section. And if you think you learned something new about it, you can invite your friends to participate into this quiz. There will be a lot of questions coming around Business Central. We are starting with the pretty basic, and I did got some comments that these are very basic questions. And believe me, I wanted to start it from basics. So if you have other friends who are learning Business Central, who are new to it, and the idea is not to remember all these properties. Let's be very clear. All the questions that you see, the idea is to make sure that you know that something like this exists. Because if you know in back of your mind that it exists, whenever you need it, you will be able to recall that fact. So I'm not saying go ahead and remember these properties, because there are a lot of it. But if you are not a new developer and you're pretty old into Business Central or Nav, I'm considering it for myself as a rebrushing of all the concept of what have changed. Is there something that I'm missing out of it? And if you have questions around the questions that I'm posting on LinkedIn, add it into the comments. I liked when one of my fellow MVP added few questions for me in one of the questions, and I'll make sure that I include those questions. We'll keep on increasing the pace of the questions as we move further, and things will go a little bit deep into other areas if you guys like it. So let me know into the comments to this video what do you think about it, and then I'll see you next week with the answers of the second week questions that are coming on your way starting today, most probably. So thank you, have a nice day, and I'll see you next week.